Hey y'all, today we're going to take a look at topic 5.12, the media. Okay, we hear a lot of negatives about the media today, but we're going to look at a little bit of it and how it changes over time and how it impacts politics. Okay, so what we need to know, we're going to look at different forms of the media. We got the princes, your TV, excuse me, not your TVs, my peaches, why would I say that? Your newspapers, your books, your pamphlets, your magazines. All right, we still got broadcasts. That could be your radio, your antenna TV, Wave 3, WLKY, WHAS 11. Subscription, maybe you subscribe to a periodical, a magazine, okay, or a newspaper, similar to print, okay, or digital and cross platform. Okay, think about streaming services, social media, YouTube. Okay, lots of different options there. So we kind of look at first, how has mass media evolved alongside communication technology? Okay, so first we have print media, like we talked about, books, magazines, and newspapers. Okay, in the past, those were hands down the biggest way information spread. The next evolution we had would have been that broadcast. Okay, that antenna TV, your radio, maybe some movies. We're including some political messaging. Okay, next we have subscriptions, things like cable and satellite. Okay, Direct TV, Dish TV, Comcast, Xfinity, and the list goes on, y'all. We got 24/7 news channels like CNN and Fox News. We also have specialized content, okay? And then next we have digital, okay? Streaming content. Maybe you're streaming your news. Maybe you're watching Netflix, the Hulu, the Disney Pluses. Okay, you also got your blogs and news sites like Mr. Wolf. Myself, I wake up every morning and read NPR's website. I don't get no old newspaper. Okay. Also, social media. Tons of people communicate through social media, and they also get their news through social media. Okay. So, this is an ever growing source of how people are getting information. So, looking at how does the media shape political knowledge? Okay. So we've got kind of a never ending cycle here. We start with investigative journalism here in the upper right quadrant. Okay. Investigative journalism would be like a long running investigation into corruption of interest to the public. This requires significant financing and sources. Okay. It takes a lot of money to do long term research and document it. Okay. Examples would be something like investigations into OxyContin and the Sackler family. If you never heard of that one, that is quite the doozy, folks. That's about the family that invented the drug OxyContin, which a lot of people believe has led to a lot of the opioid crisis here in America. Okay, so from investigative journalism here in the upper right, we go down to the lower right, political commentary. Okay, columns, shows, features, and news programming that interpret news events, election coverage, investigative journalism, and other pertinent stories. Presents political bias in its interpretation. Examples of this would be like opinion or editorial pages of newspapers, or like maybe when you get home at night, maybe your parents are watching Rachel Maddow, if your parents are more liberal people, or maybe they're watching Tucker Carlson if they're more conservative people. Okay, those would be examples of opinion based political commentary. Next in the cycle, here in the lower left, we have election coverage. Okay, news coverage of campaigns, including rallies, personnel changes, and speeches. Polling, okay, leads to horse race journalism. Think about a horse race, they go daddle 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 daddle. They all line up in a line and they start running. Maybe horse number one's in the lead. Then they're coming down the backstretch and horse number two's coming. Here comes two. He's coming. He's going to pass number one, and number two is in for the win. Okay, horse race journalism. Right, candidate A is in the lead. Then candidate B starts to gain some ground. Then out of nowhere, candidate C rockets up the graph. Okay, so polling leads to following political elections like this, always looking to see who's getting ahead rather than kind of deepening our knowledge of these candidates. Okay. Examples of this would be presidential debates or maybe on election night when you see Steve Kornacki on MSNBC going wild trying to show you what's going on where on the map. And then lastly, here in the upper left quadrant, we have news events, okay, current events as they are happening. These tend to be objective and they have potential for errors, okay, and this can happen in events, like big events happen. So, like natural disasters, like maybe there's an earthquake, God forbid. Okay, the coverage of that, we might not have all the information right away. The coverage on a crime, obviously, if the trial's not done, we might be speculating just a touch. Okay, or protests. Maybe we don't know exactly why the people are protesting. Okay, but we know it's happening, so we have to share information about it. Okay, so these are all part of that cycle of how the media is shaping your political knowledge. So, influences quality and quantity of citizen political knowledge about political life and their trust in the government. Okay, so people tend to have a preference for sound bites. All right, like it's far easier to sit and listen to somebody talk for 15 seconds on a loop on TikTok than it is to sit down and listen to a 45-minute podcast. Does that make sense? Clickbait drives consumption. Okay, that's why we put attractive little thumbnails that make people want to click on a video. Okay, global accessibility and networks. Everybody in the world can access news at any time, unless you're in one of those real authoritarian countries. Okay. We push a lot of biased or false news. Okay. I know fake news is kind of a buzzword or buzz phrase in our society, but if you look through social media, there is a lot of false news published that people maybe aren't aware of how false it is. Okay. We also have an algorithm and predictive analytics. Remember, we talked about how the feed that you see on your social media, it ain't just random, okay? They ain't just throwing stuff up there for no reason. You seeing stuff based on what you like to look at, okay? And them computers, they knows. Polling data compresses nuanced concepts, okay? The idea of who is most popular at a certain time in a race is very complex, okay? However, polling data just shows a number. Somebody has 36%, the other person has 64%. That makes it look a lot more cut and dry than it really is, folks. Okay, we also have easily digestible packets of information. Okay, it's a lot easier to read a graphic than it is to sit down and read a 10-page study. Okay, we also have conglomerated media ownership. All right, there's an old saying, you don't screw with the mouse. Disney owns tons of entities in society, like portions of Fox, ESPN, Hulu. Okay, all kinds of things are controlled by Disney, and they're not the only one. All right, so all of these factor into the way we're taking in that information. Okay, so deciphering bias in news is critical, folks, to developing political knowledge. Think about this kind of like when that one cousin who nobody in your family really gets along with comes up and says, "Hey, girl, did you hear what Aunt Marcia said about cousin Tina?" You got to think that your cousin Cindy, who's telling you this, everybody's always mad at her. She's always doing some kind of disruption. So maybe whatever she's saying about Tina probably ain't true, or if it is, she's got a very warped perception of it because she is from a position of gaining some kind of negative. Okay, so when we look at deciphering this bias, first of all, we need to look at currency. Is it recent? Does the event being talked about have context? Is it relevant to what's going on? Okay. Authority. Who is the author and what is their experience? Is it based on expertise or bias? Then we have the accuracy. Can you verify the content from multiple sources? Is it factual? Can you identify a bias? And then the purpose. Okay, why are they telling you this? Why is this being written? Are they trying to get an emotion out of you or are they trying to inform you of something? Valid sources try to inform you of things rather than try to provoke things. Okay, so for example, if we were to look at a story that said, hey, the Democrats added $500,000 of funding to the budget in order to help ruin America. That would be pretty biased, right? It's not really, that's definitely meant to provoke emotion, not inform you about anything because it's not telling you what the Democrats did in this situation. Okay. So when something is blatantly trying to provoke your emotion rather than just inform you of something, you probably know it's pretty biased. Okay. So, what should we take away, folks? Last thing we want to look at here, okay? We've talked about the forms of media. We've talked about how to identify bias, okay? Understanding why we're being presented information in a certain way, okay? So, leaving y'all with that, I just want to say, listen, y'all's a bunch of peaches, and I want to tell you, make good choices with your big noggins because you're all wonderful, and it's a joy to have you in class, and thanks for sitting through this torture. Bye, y'all. Make good choices.